So you wanted to talk about like contractors, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what specifically do you or do you need help with?
So we've had a few different contractors at this point. So a little bit of background. I flipped dozens of houses down in Westchester with a big
Okay.
company. But I found the contractors, managed them, did the scope, did the budgets, did the whole bit down there. And then I moved up here thinking that, I would just take my system and plug and play in Rochester. And it did not go that way. It's a little different up here. I can't find quite the same crews that I was finding down there.
What's
So,
the big difference between the two? Do you
so down in Westchester, I was really, really readily able to find like 2 or 3 man crews that
hmm.
could do a wide variety of the things that I needed done. So I could very easily find a flexible 2 man crew that could turn into a 4 man crew when it needed to do drywall, tile, framing, uh,
Yep.
basic electrical, basic plumbing. And then I'd bring in, specialty crews if I needed some really fine tile done or if I needed some complicated electrical done or something like that. But I'm not finding those small crews up here like I could down there. I'm not sure exactly what the difference is, but up here it seems like I can either find just a one-off 1 man
Yep.
band or a full out GC. I'm
Yep.
not finding much in the middle.
Yeah, it's I don't know what's the market like there as far as like how many people live there? Like what's the
In
population?
Westchester,
What's the population? Yeah.
Westchester is the first county north of New York City. So it's
Okay.
it's huge. There's like a lot. It's a very densely populated area.
Okay. Yeah, because feel like that probably makes a significant difference because I mean, like,
Yeah.
I think Rochester's what, like a couple 100,000
Yeah.
people. Um, so that was my first thought is like it's much less dense of a populated area. Yeah, those I would love to find crews like that too. So I was talking to my coach this past year, and I was considering like partnering with contractors, and I've always thought about it. And then my coach is like, well, why would you do that? And I'm like, because I don't want to have to deal with X, Y, and Z. And he's like, okay, that I mean, I get that, but why would you do that? And I'm like thinking and thinking, and I'm like, I don't know, because I don't want to deal with the logistics and I don't want to deal with managing all these people anymore. He's like, well, why don't you just pay more for a contractor and pay for a GC? And I'm like, yeah, I could. That would be a better option than giving up equity into making someone a partner instead, and because there's a lot more complications that can come along with the partnership than it is just hiring someone, right?
Yeah.
I know that's not maybe what you want to hear, but that was just one of the things that I had to consider. Do I need to be buying differently instead
Yeah.
of looking at the contractor as a problem? Do I need to look at the buy differently?
Yeah, so we did that on our last project. I hired more of a GC, and I won't go into specifics, but it wasn't the exact situation that I was dreaming of.
Okay.
So maybe that leads us into some other questions about how specifically, if you are going to hire a GC, how do you go about managing them and setting expectations, and then what do you
Yeah.
do when your expectations kind of go off the rails and it's not going
Yep.
exactly how you had talked about in an initial project planning phase?
Yeah. So what went wrong on that project?
So originally we were quoted about a 5 week timeline, and it ended up taking 11 weeks. And yeah. And I kept getting told, well, we didn't know about all these little details when we started. I had a fully typed like 4 page scope with everything broken down to like every component of every room. We went through it. We walked through it together. I emailed it over. Um, so I thought I was doing everything up front in setting expectations properly. And then it just went wildly off the rails. There were a lot of change orders, which we were able to minimize at the end. But I felt like I was constantly in this push and pull of like, no, we're
Yeah.
sticking to the original expectations. No, we're not changing things now. No, like it was like a twice a week occurrence.
When I look at like Jason Calder is like one guy, like
Mhm.
he's all over Facebook. I have a guy that John Harvey, he does all he does is basements. I haven't had him do a project for me yet, but um like the only people that I would really hire as far as the GC goes is if like if they're opening themselves up by exposing their business online, which like Jason does.
Yeah.
All these other businesses, if there's no online presence, then like there's like we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So that's kind of one thing that I look at is like, what is their online presence? Because if they screw me over, then I have a voice.
You have a recourse at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's always two sides of a story. So, um, I can show you my contract and then share it with you
Oh, that would be awesome.
because maybe that'll gosh, what did I do with it? I think it's in, I just oh my gosh, this is why this is my shout out to women. They're way more organized than men, or I shouldn't
Oh
say
my
way
gosh.
more, most of the time. I find, but there are men that are
Laugh
more
so hard. In our marriage, it's completely backwards.
really.
Yeah. Now
All
you.
right. So this is, I mean, for none of this stuff matters right here. You already did this.
Mhm.
Um, so one of the things that I always do, I always split up. So my contractors are responsible for giving me labor prices. So like what you're saying is like you split up per room. This is an old contract. So like I'm gonna get a specific, like I'm gonna create my scope of work personally, and then I'm gonna do a walkthrough with a contractor, and then we're just gonna edit mine. Like when we feel like, because I'm not a contractor, I might forget something. So we
Mhm.
want to work on getting this as specific as possible, which it sounds like you did. But then what I do per room, I will have them give me a labor cost, and then contractors are responsible for all the rough material. So if they're not budgeting for rough material, like it, I guess we'll get there because my expectation is if you forgot something, that's your own fault. It's not my problem. So
Yeah,
that's
that's how
the
I feel about it.
yeah, that's the expectation that I set when we do this is like, hey, um, you're bidding this out, you're a licensed professional, you should be aware of what could happen. And if you're not prepared for that, then why am I taking on your problem? That's not my problem, it's your problem. Because you
Yeah,
didn't
I say something very similar. Like then,
yeah.
that's a learning lesson for you, and hopefully you bid differently next time.
But it's very clearly defined in the expectations when I'm walking through. I'll actually read when I get this signed, I'll actually walk through it line item by line item and said, do you understand? Do you understand? Do you understand? Are you sure you understand? Because when this goes wrong, or if it does go wrong, do you understand what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
I'll do that 3 times. But it sounds like you might have done a lot of that already. So I have like change insurance liability. You probably have that, permits, warranty. This just warranties the work. Change orders. You probably had something in there about change orders. I have something here about materials and craftsmanship. Looks like I didn't finish editing this one, but the change orders, the biggest one for me, it's if there's a change order that falls outside of our scope, then that's like I have to expect that is probably going to happen, right? So I actually need to have in my budget a contingency budget for those things. So maybe that's a place that you can look at how big your contingency budget is on your projects. I typically do 12 to 15% on top of my budget just in case. Um, so all the contractors are responsible to reach out to me for change orders, and it sounds like that's what happened. You guys discussed the change orders and you approved the work. Is that correct?
Yeah, some of the change orders were a little more like, well, we didn't know the drywall was going to be quite this difficult, rather than a legitimate outside of our original scope sort of change order.
Okay. And this might be more like sounds more like it's just expectation, but just like negotiating tactics, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
that's
Um,
kind of what I'm thinking it might be coming down to
because
with this
that's an
particular
uncomfortable
situation.
yeah, that's an uncomfortable conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because how do you say that's your problem, not my problem, without offending someone? right?
Yeah, that's where I found myself like many times throughout this project.
So the reason I walked through this line item by line item, and I said, you understand, you understand. So I actually have so if it goes above the original scope, I take off $400 per week off of their final payment.
Okay.
That's another thing that I have in here to cover any overages, because like the truth is, like, that is them. That's their own problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone says, well, we weren't expecting the drywall to be this difficult, I'd say, okay, well, do you remember when we went over our contract and we went over the scope and you bid this out to the best of your ability? Basically, what you're telling me is it sounds like you didn't estimate this job properly. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you just got to ask questions. It seems like maybe you bid this incorrectly. And then if that's the case, like, how am I, I'm in a business to make money, and I'm sure you are too, but I'm trusting you, the professional on the other end, to bid this to the best of your ability. And I can't pay for your mistake.
Yeah.
So what do you think the resolution is here? And that's kind of how that conversation has to be, because I'll go back up and I'll say, well, all right, remember when we walked through this contract and we went through this room and we went through all the drywall repairs? And then I said, well, number one, if we go over, is the price good? Are we good here? Does everything make sense? We have everything light on. Do you understand exactly what you're bidding on? Yes, yes, yes. Do you understand the timeline? Yes, yes, yes. I'll go right back to my contract and I'll say, hey, we talked about this already.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I can't pay for a mistake you made. So I assume that conversation is going to happen already when I walk through this contract. So I'll have that conversation like it's happening in real time. So what happens when you get into this kitchen and there's some things that you didn't bid on, or it takes you a little bit longer? What happens next? So I'll try to have those conversations and set the expectations when I walk through that contract with them,
Okay.
just to role play and actually see what their reaction is going to be. Because then you can tell right then and there how smoothly that process is going to be.
Yeah.
And if you don't like the response and you have other people bidding on it, you could just say, hey, I don't think we're a good fit. Like a work order is something that falls outside of the scope of the agreement, like a change order, like an unforeseen. Like drywall is not an unforeseen.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So not that it's, it's a good example that we can use, but I hate to hear that that's.
I know.
But what other kind of work orders were there, so I can like fully understand?
So it was a lot of, towards the end of the project, my expectations of finish quality were not the same as their expectations of finish quality. So I went back through and there were some areas where the trim was painted the wall color. So I thought it was very reasonable to expect that to be fixed. And I kept getting pushback, like, do you really care? This house isn't really in that nice of an area anyway. Like, and it's, it was on Cottage Street. It wasn't like on Avenue D. I mean, it also wasn't in Pittsburgh, but to me, all of our houses should have good finish quality. That's not a legitimate argument to me that just because of the area the house is in, it shouldn't be finished properly to the scope of the work order.
Yeah, again, that goes back to like the previous conversations getting started. Like, so, prior to getting your final disbursement, we're going to do a walkthrough. I have a blue tape day where my expectations are that this job is completed as per our agreement. And, I'm going to walk around the house and mark any areas that that I think need a little bit of work. And if they fall within the scope of our agreement, I'm going to expect that those are taken care of before the final payment is made.
Yeah. So it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is that it's not necessarily that I wasn't detailed or specific enough in the setting expectations. It's like setting the frame and controlling the expectations and maybe doing some scripting from the beginning that I'm sticking to, so that when we get to the end of the project, everything has already been discussed up front.
Yeah. So you got to keep in mind too, like this is one my old coach told me, he's like, when you can't, so when you sacrifice price, you lose customer service skills. You lose the service side.
Yeah.
You can't have a great price and then expect someone to also be great with customer service. And I mean, we would all like that, right? Someone to give us an insane price and also have some amazing customer service and to make us
Yeah.
happy on the back end. But the truth is, like, you're not going to get that. I don't think you'll ever get that when you sacrifice price. So it's your job, if you're okay with the customer service side, is you actually have to manage that relationship and setting expectations and having that scripting in place to manage everything when something goes wrong. Say, hey, we talked about this.
Yeah.
That's all you got to say. Like, hey, we talked about this, and then just shut up. And then figure out what to do next. And they're going to be like, it's like, well, I don't remember. He's like, well, these are our contracts. Like, I noted that conversation. Like, I asked you 3 times. I mean, if your memory's that bad, should I even be hiring you on the next one? Right? I mean, that's just the truth.
Yeah.
They want to play dumb, but you've already accounted for all that scripting up front to prepare for those things to go wrong, and then you can just address them like, hey, we had this conversation already. My expectation is this, and remember when I asked you 3 times, do you understand what this means? And you said yes 3 times. Okay, all right, well, give me a call when it's done, and I'll come and do the final inspection, and we'll get you paid.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish it was that easy, but it can be, because it's just you and I just have to learn how to be better communicators.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Guess I've been diving deeper into like ownership, and like you could blame this on the contractor, but let's be honest. Like, if you always, in retrospect, look at and do a deep dive into what happened, you can, in most cases, take even more ownership instead of pointing the finger.
No, I don't think it was the contractor here. I really do think what you said about scripting and setting expectations, I was not doing well enough. I thought I was at the time, maybe, but
I'm not saying you did anything wrong, or I'm not poking at you or anything.
No, I understand. Yeah, I always think of like scripting and verbiage and all of that and negotiation on the sales and the acquisition side of things, but I haven't been paying enough attention to it on the labor management side.
Yeah, everything is think of every conversation like a negotiation, because a relationship is nothing more than managing expectations, right, and communicating. So if, like I said, when you sacrifice customer service for price, like, you're the one who has to really set the tone and then ask, do you understand what's happening? And if they don't like it, then at the end of it, then they're just not the right fit to work with. And it's definitely a learning curve.
Yeah.
But you can, and just imagine too, because like your relationships are just going to get even better, because if you can learn how to communicate better with these guys, everyone's going to be happy at the end of the day. Because most people, I mean, they're going to admit that, yeah, you're right, we had that conversation. There's no out for them at that point. Like, you've had them cornered because you've already prepared for it to happen with that conversation in advance. Right. So they can't be mad at you at that point, and they can't be frustrated. The only people they can be frustrated with themselves. So you can actually keep using them longer. And then I think a lot of people, when they hire contractors, they go through this and they get frustrated at the contractors, and then they move on to the next one. And then you can't build a relationship that way.
Yeah.
Like, you're never going to
just repeat.
Yeah. So it's our job to like cultivate those relationships, set expectations, and then we can fine tune that over time and then build that relationship over time. And maybe that's how you find that crew, is just spending a little more time in the upfront part to work on what that looks like. And then the expectations are set. No one can be upset at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good point.
What else? Yeah, I would also have something in here on yours about the, I'll send this to you. I think I need to edit this one more time about the timeline, because that's the biggest one. Because when a contractors always give you excuses about the timeline and be like, oh, well, my wife went to the hospital. Yeah. I'll be like, well, I'm sorry, but I mean, like, that's a you problem. How does that like you? I can't eat that cost.
Yeah.
Like, get your guys, wake up earlier, get your guys going and go to the hospital. Like, so I'm learning how millionaires become millionaires and billionaires become billionaires. It's because like they don't let any loose change fall through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
And like time and material, I'll never pay time and material for anything because like I can't build a business with, I have no idea what I'm ever paying for. Like you can't build out a business model on time and material because you have no idea what you're going to get into. I'm just using that as one example. So like if you have a timeline, like if you're always going over your timeline, just think about how much money you're losing on that and compound that over the extend it over your lifetime of how much money you would have lost. So we think like, oh, well, it's only $500. Like it was, it's not a big deal. Right. But compound that over the next 10 to 15
Every
years.
project. Yeah.
Yeah, of how much money that is. And then not only how much money you've lost, but what that money would look like had you reinvested it. So it's the money you lost and the money you lost opportunity cost because you could not redeploy that into something else. So
Yeah.
I've been thinking about wealth a lot more and how to build wealth and I can only do that correctly if I'm the one setting the tone and setting expectations, because then the other person has nowhere to run when I just say, hey, like, this is what we agreed to. I'm sorry that it sucks. And people are starting, like, my agent made a comment one day. Sometimes I'm just very direct, right? But like, if we already had a conversation about this, then I don't need to waste 10 minutes. I'm just like, hey, this is what it is. This is what we agreed to. And if I'm missing something, let me know and we can talk about it. But from what we agreed to, like, we agreed to a timeline. You put your best foot forward. You went over the timeline. How is that my problem?
Yep.
And you can be confident in saying that only if you do the best you can to set those expectations up front. Because I cannot do it if I made an error, like I lack no confidence. But if I have, and this has taken a year for me to be confident to say that because I've made the mistakes along the way, and I'm like, damn, I let that one little thing slide. It's like that's the loose change. Like you just let one little thing slide, and then when you get to the end of it, I can't morally like keep that tone going because I let up myself. So there's somewhat of a learning curve there too.
Yeah, I think this one was a big learning curve for me because I think I backed myself into a corner a little bit, not having those conversations up front. So then when it came time to like remind them of the expectations that we did set expectations, but they weren't explicit and they weren't specific enough.
Yep.
So then I couldn't go back and lean on that. And then I felt like, how do we get back on the rails 5 weeks into a 4-week project with 3 weeks left on it?
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a few go well over
Yeah.
timelines. And I mean so were you guys using your own money?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing because I mean if
Well,
you're
we were using our own money for the rehab.
but you're still paying, that's a lot of money on another thing too. It's like if you walk through contract, I mean, he should know this because he works with investors, but like, and the reason why I have the $400 per day is because this actually costs me this much. So
That's what I was trying to
yeah,
explain, but that's again, I should have done that from the beginning.
yeah, it's hard to do it when you're at the end of it because like
Yep.
it really doesn't matter because it is what it is, and they're going to get it done when they get it done. You've
Yeah.
lost all your leverage at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But like I had talked to one of my students about this part, and this is where he really struggled. Because it's hard to just be like, no, like, why were you late? I had to take my kid to school. Well, when you give up an ounce of that leverage, like you lose all your leverage. Because then contractors don't necessarily do this on purpose. Maybe some of them do, but like once, like a person should never make their problems your problem. So if you can have that conversation and do it in a loving way, like, hey, I understand, but like, let's look at this. This happened to you. We've had an agreement. Like, how is that my problem? If there's something you need help with, like, let me know. But like, I can't, like this, you just cost me $500 today. Like, how am I, are you going to, can I take that off the final bill?
Right. Who's paying for that?
Yeah. So, and you can have that conversation if you need it. Like I said, kind of circling back around, only if you have these conversations up front.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think going into these next few projects, I'm going to start off very differently from the last couple.
Yeah, and if you need any help with those conversations, just let me know, because what you can also do with that contractor is just say, hey, take some accountability and say, hey, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better to make this job easier for you? Like, just own it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And don't put it on them. What could I have done to make this job better for you?
Yeah.
I'll be much more receptive to that, and instead of you going to him and saying, I think you could improve, or just pointing the finger at him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's never goes well.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. I think just the only other thing is, do you have any practical places in Rochester that you like to look for contractors? Like, I used to use Thumbtack a lot, but that doesn't seem very popular anymore. I'm not sure.
People have just been using our coffee cup group, the RE coffee cup group, for contacts. But right now I am paying. So I have a friend who is a project manager for Krista Construction. He does all their big projects.
Okay.
So I'm paying him to take over that problem. Um, so for me, I have to look at the buy and pay less for a home on a flip. Because I don't ever, I mean, it's just not something that I have time for right now.
Yeah.
Because it's work to manage those relationships. Because you're managing a child, essentially. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
But you have to feed their ego.
Yep.
Where's it, figure out their love language? Like, do they I'm serious. This might sound stupid. If you can figure out their love language, you can communicate better. Like, do they like gifts? Bring them coffee and donuts.
Yeah, I used to do that a lot. Some of them just like to get talked up.
Yeah. Do you mind me asking, like, what did that end up costing you over your budget at the end?
I think so the original budget was 30,000 and we ended up spending about 40,000.
Okay.
So it was a big renovation, but
how big was the house?
It's 2,400 square feet.
And it's a single family?
Yeah. 6 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms.
You did 2 full baths, everything. Kitchen. I mean, 40 grand for a house that big. What about on the exterior?
New roof on the house and the garage, and then just new trim on the siding. Kept the old siding.
Did you paint the exterior?
No, it's asphalt siding, shingle.
Man, 40 grand on a house that bad is not bad. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
It wasn't that bad, but I buy all the material myself also. That's just the way I've run every project I've done. So we do a lot with like the restore and things like that. So we saved a lot on the material side. The bulk of that budget was labor. Almost all of it was labor.
Really? Okay.
I think we spent almost 30 on the labor and probably like 13 on material.
I mean, I just look like I'm in Maplewood looking at a property right now, and every flipper that I talk to, I mean, we're looking at a $55,000 rehab on a 2,400 square foot home. So
wow.
like, yeah, and that's for flippers. I mean, we're spending more. I mean, obviously the finished materials are more costly. But yeah, I still really think so if you went up in your materials, you're probably looking at that 50, 55 mark.
But I didn't rip out bathrooms either. Like, I worked with some of the tile that was already there in the bathrooms. Like, I floored over some floor that was already there with LVP.
Okay.
I definitely tried to like work with the house wherever I could, because it's not a flip, I'm going for durability.
Okay. Did you do windows?
We did 11 windows.
What'd that cost you per window?
I bought them myself from Home Depot, and then they charged me $150 a window to install them.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So you can cut back your budget there. Like I would never pay anyone more than $75 to do a window.
Yeah, it's like 4 screws.
Yeah, it's not that easy. I've had this conversation with contractors and I have to give it up. I have to give it, I'm like, it's easy, but then, I actually spent the time on a property with one of my guys who does my windows and I'm like, it's not as easy as we think it is, especially if they have to shim it and make it level.
Yeah.
Off, put the trim back on.
Which I do know they did have to do here because the window sizes were a little wonky.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, so if they're putting new trim on and if they're like doing the trim on the inside and outside and redoing that, that's a different story. Then maybe 150 if they're redoing the trim.
It's just the inside because they were replacements. Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to be at about 200 a window installed is usually what I pay. And then like, so when I do my budget, I try to like come up with a price for like your flooring's the same, right? So I'll pay $2 or less for LVT. And then my price per square foot is, I don't pay any more than $2 for that stuff. What are you paying on your install for the LVT?
I'd have to look back at the numbers. I had an itemized budget at the beginning of this, but that was 3 months ago now. I probably should have brushed up before we got on the call.
No, that's all right. I just, like $2 is typically what people are paying for a sand and refinish. You're $1.50 to $2. Most people are charging $2. But those are fixed things that maybe knowing what the going rate is, like you can negotiate on some more stuff, or just, it helps to have someone in-house doing everything, but you still you should be paying less because they get the whole job.
Right.
Yeah. So there should be a little bit of value or discount there. All right. Well, next one sounds like you're going to kick some booty.
Yeah. I'm ready this time.
Yeah. See, I want to know like what I'm getting charged per light install, what I'm getting charged per receptacle. Because I'm just going to count all of them because I want to get specific as I can for everything. Mm-hmm. How much you're going to charge me per linear foot for shoe molding, how much you're going to charge me price per square foot for LVT, stuff like that.
Yeah, because then you can compare apples to apples, which is really helpful.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome.
Well, I got to hop on another call here at 11.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, do you have any other questions before we hop off at all?
I don't think so. Is there anything that we can do to help you in your business? I know you're growing your coaching and mentoring program. Can I blast you out on Instagram? Is there, we're not as big as you are, but if there's anything I can do to, repay the favor. Yeah, that's, it's just paying it forward. If you, any shout outs would be amazing. I'm definitely my goal for 2021 is to fill up my coaching slots, which are, I have 4 students now, so I'm looking to take on another 4 students. So that shouldn't be too hard. I think I'm interviewing like one person a month and it's just all organic. So yeah, any help you could do, just shouting people out or shouting me out, or if you know anyone who wants to start flipping.